What's up, fellow Tubians? So I feel like on this channel we often cover all kinds of awesome mid-range laptops and even some high-end or premium ones, but sometimes the little guys get left behind. I'm talking about the ultra budget category, the one that's often the foundation of laptops, which is exactly why today we're covering a very popular one, Lenovo's IdeaPad 1. That's right, this one is at the bottom of the IdeaPad series, but it's a very critical one. So the latest configuration on this laptop that you can buy today currently includes Intel's Pentium Silver and 5030 quad-core processor. It comes with a mere 4 gigabytes of RAM. It also has Intel's UHD 600 series integrated graphics. Additionally, it comes with a 128 gigabyte solid-state drive. It also has Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5.0. And lastly, this particular configuration is the 14-inch HD screen variant. Now, of course, these specs might seem underwhelming to a lot of people, but keep in mind, this is a value-packed laptop. It's well below the sub $500 price point, which means it's designed to give you as much value as possible, and we're gonna see where it stands in that respective category. As always, if you guys enjoy this review, hit that like button, sub to my channel, it genuinely helps me grow. Thanks for watching. Starting off with a real quick unboxing, as you can see that the IdeaPad 1 comes in some really basic cardboard packaging. Lenovo was generous enough to include the Lenovo badging at the bottom over here. Thank you, Lenovo. So once you proceed to opening the content seal itself and then opening the actual box, inside it's pretty straightforward. First and foremost, you have the IdeaPad 1 in itself. So remove all that protective packaging around it, and here you go in all its glory. But more on that in a quick minute. Past that, you actually have a 45-watt charger or adapter, if you will. Now, it's a 2-in-1 piece, so the wall outlet piece is connected straight to the adapter itself. And yes, it does have a proprietary pin, but that's quite forgivable at this price point as opposed to having a USB-C one. In terms of design, I really respect the fact that Lenovo keeps the same IdeaPad look you find on higher-end models in this particular model over here. So it has that nice conservative business-like look that'll do great in a casual or professional environment. Despite having a full hard TPU or plastic build, it doesn't feel cheap or finicky. There's not a whole lot of flex around the body. In terms of weight, this thing is just shy of 3.1 pounds. So while it's not the lightest 14-inch laptop out there, it's still on the lighter side when compared to some other 14-inch laptops. Starting off with the top side, like I mentioned, you have a hard TPU finish, but it doesn't feel cheap or finicky in the slightest. Rather, it has this perfectly smooth finish. There's no particular texture. There's not a whole lot of branding. This is a very conservative looking laptop. You do have that Lenovo badge at the bottom right corner there to remind you that this is a Lenovo laptop. When you make your way to the rear side of the laptop, there's really not a whole lot going on. It's flat and linear, but you can see the outer casing of the hinge itself, and it's a single tier hinge, but more on that later on. The side of the laptop is rather interesting. So on one side, you have all your ports. This includes the DC charging jack port. You also have two USB-A Super C ports. Additionally, you have a HDMI 1.4 port. And interestingly enough, you have a micro SD card reader, which is not commonly found at this price point. So kudos to Lenovo for that. And of course, you have LED indicators to show the status of the laptop. On the other side, you have a basic headphone jack, and that's pretty much everything in terms of I/O ports. It would have been nice to have at least one USB-C port, but again, I'm being more forgiving given the price point of this laptop. The bottom side of this laptop also has a big plastic finish, so it's pretty standard stuff, but you'll notice you have a very small air intake vent. Thankfully, this is not cause for concern necessarily because this is using an ultra low wattage processor, so it really doesn't need all that much circulation to keep it running nice and cool. With that said, you'll also notice on either corner you have a speaker grill. So this is a dual setup configured speaker grill, and it is bottom firing, but we'll do a sound test later on in the video, so stay tuned. Upon unfolding this laptop, the first thing you'll notice is the generous amount of palm rest space available to you for a 14-inch laptop. But the real MVP here is that trackpad. It has a generous amount of real estate space to surf around despite having a plastic surface finish, which again is totally acceptable at this price point. It's actually more tactile. It has less flex than some laptops that are priced twice as much. Seriously, this is a very nice trackpad. It's also really well calibrated. I was honestly impressed at just the kind of quality you're getting at this price point again. If you thought the trackpad was good, wait till you hear about the keyboard. So not only do the keys have a ample amount of surface surface area for a nice experience. The actual keystrokes have plenty of key travel, they're tactile, and it's a pleasure to type on this keyboard. This is something I noticed with Lenovo, whether you buy the IdeaPad 1, 3, or 5, the keyboard quality stays more or less consistent, and it's definitely top notch in that regard. Unfortunately, there is no backlighting whatsoever. I wish they charged a couple of bucks extra to include it, but it's not necessarily a make or break for most people. Also, there is no sort of biometric scanning, such as a fingerprint scanner on board, which again is pretty normal at this particular price category. Above the keyboard is where you have the single mechanism hinge system, and while it's not necessarily finicky, it definitely does have a fair bit of wobble, and generally speaking, I wouldn't say this thing is designed for a lot of wear and tear, so to maximize the lifespan with this hinge, I definitely advise being gentle when opening or closing this laptop. As far as the display fitting goes, pretty standard stuff. So you have a fairly thick chin at the bottom. You also have reasonably narrow bezels on either side that would fit in with modern day standards, but you also have a rather fat forehead, and the whole thing has a plastic casing around it. Now at the center of the forehead is where you have that 720p webcam. I'll be honest, it's about as mediocre as they come. It doesn't do too well in low light settings, but does just fine in brighter or daylight settings, and I kind of feel guilty criticizing it, particularly when much more expensive laptops still offer cheap 720p webcams. Display wise, look guys, this is a very basic machine, hence it has a very basic display. So in terms of resolution, it's essentially 720p or HD if you will. You have a standard 60Hz refresh rate. But the real downer here is the fact that this is a very cheap TN panel, which means you have rather limited viewing angle, so anything beyond about 20-30 degrees on either corner is going to create enormous amounts of silver glare. It's also worth noting you have a rather limited sRGB rating of just 51%, so colors don't look particularly bright or vivid, but that again is very normal at this particular price category, and you shouldn't be using this for creative purposes if that's what you have in mind. It's also worth noting you have a peak brightness of just 225 nits. This is a very limited amount. If you use this in bright daylight settings, the screen is easily overcome by glare or external lighting, so keep that in mind. In terms of performance, keep in mind this is a very basic laptop again, which basically means that Pentium Silver processor is good enough for general productivity, and just that. That basically means activities like web browsing, accessing your online banking, or typing up a Word document, or perhaps watching a video on YouTube will work just fine. That 4 gigabytes of RAM is more than ample for activities like that, but you cannot go too much more beyond that. So you can't do photo or video editing on here. You most definitely cannot run most games on here, and even if you do manage to run any of them, they're gonna run at a very subpar frame rate, which outright makes them non-viable. So keep in mind this is a laptop for basic productivity, and that should be your use case. In terms of thermals, this is a relatively cool running laptop considering it has no dedicated fan whatsoever. So at its absolute peak load, we hit a surface temperature of just 32 degrees Celsius, which is honestly nothing. And keep in mind, peak load in the case of this computer literally means opening a bunch of Google Chrome tabs and running more than one YouTube video at the time. Now, with that said, under more realistic or sustained loads, it usually hovers around the 22 to 23 degrees Celsius mark, and it can go as little as 21 degrees Celsius. Since there is no fan on this machine, there is no sound test for the actual fan, so it's going to be ultra quiet at any given time of your use. Another pro side of having an ultra low performance laptop is battery life. We found under an average workload at 50% brightness, I got almost 11 hours on a single charge. And if you are doing something slightly more heavier, like let's say watching Netflix, that only drops down to about 9.5 hours, which all in all is definitely all day battery life. In terms of sound quality, these speakers on here are really mediocre. There's a ton of distortion above 50% volume. Despite that though, they are fairly loud. Have a quick listen for yourself.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me, an open wound scar to see. Everybody come here, gather round, welcome to the freak show, the best in town. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't get along with anybody, honestly. I've been living in my own head, constantly thoughts jumbled around, think I need a new lobotomy. Wait, all these thoughts are too negative, I don't want to get lost in the sedative. Gotta show 'em.
Here's the power summary. At $430 US approximately, this is definitely a budget laptop. While not the cheapest, it's still down there in terms of pricing. And for that, you get what I consider to be very nice build quality. Despite being all plastic, it doesn't feel finicky, cheap, or flimsy. It's well put together. Additionally, you have one of the best trackpad and keyboards I've seen on a budget laptop. In fact, it's so good, it rivals laptops that are twice as expensive as this guy, which in itself is a testament to quality. You also have fantastic battery life that can easily last a full day, if not more. And IO port diversity, while not fantastic, isn't bad either. And hey, you get a micro SD card reader. Now, of course, keep in mind there are some major trade-offs at this price point. You get a very lackluster display, which honestly is only good for just media consumption. Any sort of heavy activity can't actually be done on this display, which isn't a problem because that processor really can't handle anything more than just basic web browsing or general productivity tasks. Do not buy this laptop if you plan to do even casual gaming or any sort of remotely heavy duty activity. It will not be able to handle it. It has a very primitive use case. But with that said, if you are the kind of person who just needs a laptop for those kind of basic activities, this is really a high quality machine in that regard. As always, if you guys enjoyed this review, hit that like button, sub to my channel, it genuinely helps me grow. And hey, if you're interested in buying this laptop, you can always check out the affiliate links in the video description and you can help fund the channel at no extra cost to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.